Well, I think it's probably evening where you are, but good afternoon from San Francisco. Matt, I'm very pleased that we have this opportunity to connect. You and I met a number of years ago now, thanks to our friend and colleague, Ellen Sebastian Chang. And you had, with Meet Me at the Crossroads, done a great interview of the work that The World as It Could Be is doing with our class at Arroyo High School, which we're very proud to show. And now I'm thrilled that we have the opportunity to showcase the work you're doing as part of Trinity City Comics and the Black and Blue Story Project. So here we go. And I'd love for you to introduce who we have on board here.
Thanks, Sandy. And I want to say that The World as It Could Be is an inspiration for Trinity City Comics. Seeing the work that young people at Arroyo High School and other organizations and schools that you've worked at is just such a testament to the power of human rights education as a concept and as a practice, particularly when it's integrated with the arts, which you and Ellen have figured out such a powerful way to do. So really, kudos to you and the group. Yeah. So I have with me two very amazing people who I'm very happy to introduce to you, Steve Prince and Relina. Steve is the lead illustrator and leader of the Trinity City Comics project, one of the first people to be involved in the conceptualization of it, as well as he's the visual, I think, as we'd like to say, the visual prophet of Trinity City. Trinity City takes place in the year 2087. And one of the things I think you'll be interested to hear is just Steve's take on the future and the visual world of the future. Anything you want to lead off with, Steve, as far as what is exciting to you about the project?
Absolutely. Sandy, is absolutely privileged and honored to be able to share and to talk with you about this exciting project that we're a part of. And I think one of the things that I would lead off with was a question that I had to the story that we created. And one of the things that I know that we have that is a powerful tool is, the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So we have tens of thousands of words that we're able to share through this particular book. Mm-hmm. And so I know that, yes, we have a working narrative that's going in terms of what the story is actually representing. But I had asked the question as it relates to circulating around Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, one of the species that went into hyper save mode was ants. And one of the things that they did was they bound their bodies together and created an island out of themselves and actually floated on the water in order to keep its species alive. So I asked, in the context of, for centuries, for eons, insects and animals and so forth that have watched mankind basically try to destroy the world over and over and over again. And I wonder what it's like through the eyes of an insect, through the eyes of a lizard, through the eyes of a bird, and how they actually really see us. And in terms of what we do, in terms of not how we treat each other, but how we treat the planet. And so that was like one of the first essential questions that I thought that could be asked very subtly, because in the foreground of the very first image, when you open a book, there's a couple of ants that are crawling up a little branch, and there's a lizard going across the very bottom. And we know that those species have been around for millions of years, and they have existed through all types of calamities. And so that first question I begin to ask as a visual artist is, when will we get it right? When will we learn how to treat each other well? When will we truly not only love ourselves and love each other and see each other as brother and sister, but when will we also create a balance between that of humanity and that of everything around us? So I think that those are some essential questions that I think that we need to begin to grapple with and answer And I think that they ultimately become like the flatbed or the those nuances that are germane to us talking about anything about social justice and all these kind of things. At the very heart of it, do we love ourselves and do we love each other? And do we love the space in which we live in? So that's where I like to start.
And Relina, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you came to be involved in the project and what you're working on.
Yes, I came to be involved with the project through my own community service. I was a member of Louisiana 4-H, and Mr. Matt connected to Miss Megan Franks, who was one of our youth coordinators. Um, and because of my involvement with 4-H, I was selected. So we've been in communication since November 2021, and I've watched the whole project evolve. I've seen like the beginning stages, what could be the story, and then as we brought on the rest of the creative team, I've just seen it all come to life. So it's kind of surreal to be interviewed about it when the first issue is out. This is, I guess, my second interview
Mhm.
after the issue released. So that's how I how I came to be part of it. I was kind of just there from the conception.
Wonderful. I have to say, I
Yes.
haven't heard about 4-H in a while, but I was a member when I was in elementary school. I remember it vividly. And it actually played a big role in my life, even at a young age. So I'm so happy
Same
to
here.
share that with you.
Yes. I
Mhm.
agree. 4-H has had a huge impact on my life.
Well, let's begin. Let's learn about this work. And I know we'll begin at the beginning. I'll throw out this first of our 4 questions, and that is, what is the work carried out by Trinity City Comics? And I'll put the two together so you can tie it together as you wish, but Trinity City Comics and the Black and Blue Story Project, and who is involved in this work?
Yeah, so I can take a first stab at that. So Trinity City Comics comes out of a group of artists and activists called the Black and Blue Story Project. And we have been together in different configurations for almost 10 years, since 2014. We began originally to tell the story of one of the first African-American female police officers in New Orleans, Yvonne Bechet, who at that time was about 80 years old, and a friend of mine. And I interviewed her, conducted a series of oral history interviews with her to find out about her experiences as someone who really bridged the community law enforcement divide in a very thoughtful way. And I won't go into big details about Yvonne's story because it would take a whole interview in and of herself. But suffice it to say, we ended up, the Black and Blue Story Project created a play based on her life that was very successful in bringing folks together around discussions around law enforcement back in 2018. And now, after that success, we decided we wanted to work with specifically a young person's audience, a youth audience. And comic books seem to be a very effective way to go about doing it. And this time, instead of looking to the past and history, we wanted to look to the future. So we developed this idea of an Afrofuturist comic book story about New Orleans, and that would feature teenagers as the protagonists. And based on that, we commissioned Steve, and we commissioned Angelique Rocher, the scriptwriter, and 3 teenagers from a local organization called Yaya, which develops teenagers as storytellers and visual artists. And Steve and Angelique and 4 people from Yaya were the team that created not only the Trinity City issue #1, which is now out and available online, but also the universe of Trinity City, which we plan to continue and expand upon over the next couple of years. So the idea behind it is the same as the play that we did about Yvonne, which is to get people talking, in this case, teenagers, to get people talking about the future of their communities, and particularly about law enforcement, public safety. What does it take for a community to be safe? And what role do the people have in making that happen? And that's really, I think, Steve, does that sound like a kind of the germ of the idea that we presented to you?
Absolutely. I think that that was very eloquently stated by you in terms of, no, seriously. In that really interested me and piqued me to want to embrace this project, and I interviewed with Matt, and he wanted to see where my heart was at and what kind of things that drove my work. And so my work is centered here. So this is not something that's new to me. Like I said, oh, that sounds like an interesting project. I want to embrace that. This is my life. This is what I do. And this is what I've dedicated myself to do, utilizing art as a tool by which we can use it as a spark to begin to grapple with these issues. One of the things that I know that this book does in terms of focusing on youth, it is one that it really is a great reflective of history. When we think about some of the greatest movements that have taken place throughout history, it's been the youth have been at the helm. And some of those youth look really old, but they're really not. and one would say that the wisdom is so great inside of them that they're actually beyond their years. And I think about different movements that were great that happened in our nation. I think about what took place down in Alabama and who was on the front lines of dealing with these issues and changing the tide. I think about who's on the front line in terms of our school systems, in terms of integration. It was our kids, it was our children who was receiving all that vitriol. And how beautiful it is that we have a project that we actually center it from a teenage voice, centered on characters that they help to develop. And we create this book and we deposit it into these spaces for them to see themselves, because representation matters, but also for them to grapple with these issues and to have curriculum that's based upon these ideas to get them to think more critically about not only their bodies and what is happening, but also let them know that they have agency. And the agency that they have is that they have power, and the power that they can have if they work together as a mass. That's how change is created. I think about where I'm at. I'm at William & Mary University. There's a program that was started on our campus called the Lemon Project. It was not started by professors. It was not started by an outside voice. It was started by young people, students, who recognized that there was an injustice happening on the campus as related to African bodies that were enslaved at the second oldest institution in the United States. And that voice spoke up and forced the institution to reveal its hand of things that they actually wanted to keep hidden, but they brought it to the light. And that's what I believe that this book that we're dealing with in terms of Trinity City is about, bringing things to the light and utilizing our imagination as a tool by which we could get people to see and envision what could the future look like. Are we going to just continue to repeat these issues? And will the insects continue to look at us and see us do this mess over and over again? Or will we truly learn from our past mistakes? Will we look back like the Ghanaian concept of Sankofa, look back in order for us to move forward and understand that past is important to helping us to grapple with the issues that we're grappling with now so that we are not doomed to repeat them. So what Matt is saying, what appealed to me is the fact that that it was youth focused, and that's what drew me to it. And I wanted to do it because I understand that my time is short. And so what do we do with the life force that we have? It has to be, as one of my mentors from undergrad at Xavier University, John Scott, said, whenever he gave you something, you normally would say thank you, and he would simply respond, pass it on. And that's how I believe our role. We have to pass it on, and not just simply pass on the stories. We have to pass on a heart for activism, a heart for seeing change, a heart for seeing us work as a true communal body. And that's why I believe that this book is essentially, that's what it's about.
Just I have a clarifying question. So now that the book is out, are you working with different schools or other forums for having the kinds of discussions that you're talking about? Is that or is that the next step?
Yeah, we've begun doing that. As Relina mentioned, she's done a public panel. She represented us at a public panel about a year ago, and I think we're hoping to do more of that, much more of that now that the comic book is out. And I wanted to mention, we're answering your question, but I also want to mention, I think, that Relina's involvement here is for us, I think, a big piece of how we try to walk the talk about intergenerational work, and she'll talk a little bit later on, but I wanted to just say that I think that a big piece of this project and how we try to do things is recognizing this idea that, like what Steve is saying, that until we love each other, we love ourselves, and we love all the different variations of ourselves that we see in other people, we will keep repeating the same mistakes of the past, if we're even allowed to much longer. So I think that's a lot of what the theme is about. And I think we're manifesting that in terms of how we're rolling out the comic book and who we're engaging. We've just started reaching out to high schools and after school programs. We've conducted 2 pilot workshops. It's basically like a discussion group about the comic book that's led by students, and it's a 2-hour workshop that invites young people to really be thoughtful consumers about the comic book and how it relates to the issues in their lives. And what we're going to be doing over the next few months is to develop an intermediate and an advanced level workshop as well, that we'll continue to offer to different schools and youth organizations if there continues to be interest in learning more. So we're looking to move young people from just being consumers to, over time, being contributors to the Trinity City mythology and the Trinity City story. We're going to be having different contests to different, Relina's going to be working on a blog as a way to invite our teen readers to tell us where they would like the story to go. And then ultimately, we're hoping that they move to not just contributors to our story, but creators of stories of their own around issues that they care about. So it's really ultimately, it's a youth development project, I guess you would call it.
Well, I think you've touched already on what I'm going to call question 2, but perhaps you may want to elaborate a little bit more. I feel like I posed the question, or what are the ways that you see this work touching the lives of the different people or groups of people that will be interacting with Trinity City Comics? And
Relina has a good answer for that.
So as Mr. Matt said, I am the youth outreach worker. So I give feedback and ideas on how we can get teens engaged. So like he talked about the workshops, I helped with the survey. I helped talk about like gather people that I've known, my own contacts, the youth groups that I've been involved with. Basically, I give feedback and ideas how we can get the teens engaged in the comic. And so I've had the opportunity to reach out to other young adults and to let them know that this may be something that they're interested in and something that they can engage with. And then I've gotten to read their feedback from the survey that I helped create. So in the creative process, I was going back and forth with Mr. Matt about what I think teenagers would like to be asked about. And then also what we would really value hearing back from them for our end, for the to create or to edit or create and go on with the story. So I would say that the ways that this touches the lives of different people and groups who interact with it is that they feel seen and inspired. Um, my friend who I go to school with, but I've gotten to know her through her engagement with the comic. And she said she was very grateful for a story that addresses topics that are close to home. And I agree, as a New Orleans young adult and as someone in the world right now, it's very inspiring to read a story about people who have different obstacles that are personal to them and then see them take on issues that affect everyone at the same time. And I think that it ties into the wholeness of the like the fifth principle, the wholeness of the differently abled, that we, and I'm going to read the excerpt, we value our people as they are for who they are and understand that people have inherent worth outside of capitalist notions of productivity. Each person is full of history and life experience. Each person has an internal experience composed of their own thoughts, sensations, emotions, fantasies, perceptions, idiosyncrasies, and disabled people are whole people. And like when I was going through the comic, which I've read about 100 times now, but I was going through the lens with disability justice and seeing that Marcus is seen as privileged because of his parents and his access and his status, but is still, at the end of the day, on page 25, needs his nasal spray. Like he just, there's nothing that can change because of who his parents are. That's just how he was born, or circumstances um make him out to be. And so these are not disadvantages to someone's being or to the teamwork, as like the three teens they start they're gonna begin attacking things together. It's not a disadvantage to Marcus or to the team, but it's rather that different abilities are not always met with the accommodations necessary to survive and thrive, such as glasses aid the visibly impaired, or how access to inhalers and nasal sprays saves lives. Like people can wake up, put their glasses on, and go about their day, really only at the expense of their bank account, which is its own problem. The access brings up the conversation of like equality versus equity. The typically abled are accommodated in our world. And then with the invisible disabilities, physical, mental, etc., they're the people who are typically abled are empowered to continue on in the world, and they can deal with certain problems that the whole world deals with, but it, it's not it's not an inherent problem for the differently abled. It's something that's a problem with the society and the world and the access that we have. So it's important that we create a world that is not only accommodating but empowering for people with all different abilities. And I see a world like that with Trinity City.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this next question is really a way of connecting the work that you're doing with some of the work that we're doing, which is bringing attention to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so I'm wondering how you might explain how the work that you're doing intersects with the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and human rights education.
The commitment that we have to disability justice, which Relina was talking about, that's what she's been referencing, is probably the easiest and most visible aspect to what we're talking about. We have three main themes, and I would say they all relate to the Universal Declaration: community safety, climate change, and disability justice. And I would say all three of those have a human rights aspect to them, but the disability justice might be the most powerful, or the one worth referencing most, because it affects the other two really profoundly. That disability justice is really a way of looking at all of us differently, as what Relina was saying, as asset-based rather than deficit-based. And that has a meaning that goes beyond people who are labeled in a certain way to really think about what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be part of a society? And what does it mean to have rights? If everybody at some level has disabilities, which is essentially what disability justice says, in my opinion, is that everybody, especially as you get older, you know, everybody ends up having disabilities at some point in their lives. So disability justice is really a way of looking at all the rights differently. However, there's, you know, things like Article 2, where everyone is guaranteed or the same rights, regardless of their background. You know, that I think is very applicable to disability justice. And then it goes kind of down the line, you know, just the notion that this is in Article 22, the society in which you live should help you to develop and to make the most of all the advantages that are available to you. So I think those are the ones that I think might stick out the most. I don't know if Steve or Relina have other kind of specific articles, but I would say really it's the whole notion of human rights as expressed through disability justice.
I guess we were talking about the different articles, you know, one of the characters towards the end of the book gets arrested, you know, so, you know, that one addresses, of course, Article 19. You know, everyone has the right or freedom of opinion and expression, but it also goes to Article 9, and no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest and detention or exile. So, you know, you got all these things that are intersecting that we have in the book. And then another element that we're addressing too in there is the issue of human trafficking, which is a current major issue that's going on. And that will show its head, rear its ugly head more in issue 2. But there's allusions to it in this book already, because there's a mystery about one of the characters who goes missing. And then there's this board in the book, I forget what page it's on, but on that board, you will see names and names on top of names of people who are missing. And they're like, where did they go? You know, I can't help but think about back in the 90s, 80s into the 90s, there were a series of Black women that were missing, and that disability and justice as it relates to white women and Black women that were going on. You know, what we saw in the news over and over again is white woman with blonde hair gets looked after, whereas a Black woman in the Black community, she doesn't get looked after because her body is not valued to the same way. And in Baltimore, there was a series of Black women that were being abducted, and finally when they did the research on it, it was a horrific look where they literally had almost like a circle dot around the center where this person was going out and abducting these people. And it was like, all you had to do is like, it was just like some of the basic kind of investigative minds could have worked on it and realized the guy was sitting in the middle of the community and was going out from a radius and abducting these women. And and then to go back in time, we think about Jim Crow laws and those effects and how some of those things have continued to have their echoes within our communities, particularly across the South. You know, when, the Jim Crow laws well into the 60s, 70s, you know, women didn't have rights, not even rights over their own bodies, weren't even looked upon in the books as being a human being. Those are the kind of things that as we look back, as we look at the history of our nation, and the things that we've gone through and these inequities, and they fall in everything. We think about just in the realm of sports, you know, and what we're seeing right now, the World Cup is going on, and we got women who are just now starting to get paid the same thing that men get paid. You know, we can go on and on and on, and all these different issues that we begin to talk about that we're trying to grapple with, but we're also trying to mobilize people to have these deeper conversations, but know that they have to work together. And if we work together as one communal body, we can make change, because it's happened before, you know, and we've seen it. People went on the front line. So it's not like it's some brand new idea. We know it works, but we have to remember, and the work is hard work. It's work that when I saw during the pandemic, and then we had, of course, we lost George Floyd, and then people were coming out talking about Black Lives Matter and so forth, and kids were out there protesting. They were out there strong. But what I noticed is that strength of the numbers that were out there protesting slowly withered away. because social justice work is tiring. Social justice work is taxing, and it requires persistence, consistency, a doggedness, and it also requires vision. Hence, that's why we're working with something like this comic book, because that's one that deals with, in essence, the prophetic imagination that can see who we could be and what we could look like. And the artist in our societal structure and our societal fabric is that visionary. It's the one who helps to see and can see deeper. And so we're using this tool of this comic as a means of engagement in these kinds of conversations where we don't have to imagine into the future that we have the same problems, that we can imagine the future, even like Stevie Wonder talked about, the song called Saturn, where the people fly, we can imagine those kinds of ways, and so that's why it's so beautiful. I think it's such a beautiful tool, and knowing how prevalent, how powerful comics, graphic novels are within our societal structure, so powerful that they're now college courses, and people are getting degrees in it, and they see the importance of these comics beyond just for our entertainment, but they are actually containers of history and containers of ways in which it helps us to remember, because we remember a picture, we remember image, we remember a song that we heard, those kind of things, and art can play that role over and over and over again. And so that's how we're trying to use it as a tool.
Right. Well, I think in that vein, what do you want community members and leaders to know about why the work of Trinity City Comics and this Black and Blue project? Why is this so important, and how can other people help further this work?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, I think we want people to remember, because I think we all know it, how powerful storytelling and story listening is to social change. That I think what we're doing, as Steve was saying, graphic storytelling is really, it's like hieroglyphics. It's an ancient practice of bringing people together and putting something, the same thing, in front of all of us and having us talk about it. And if you've ever seen or been a member of a group of teenagers talking about a comic book or a movie or some work of art that they've seen together, you know what I'm talking about. It's an ancient ritual, really, in its own way, that we all have experience. I think at some point or another we have experience with, and that it's an underutilized tool or strategy for stimulating social change. And that's, I think, a lot of what we're trying to do and to remind people about. And I think at this moment, the best way they could help us is to read the comic, download it from our website, and hopefully you can share the link with folks. And on the same page where you see the download button for the comic book, if you go back to that page after you read the comic book, we have a very short survey that that Relina mentioned before, that's very important to us, because we're looking to really develop an audience of readers, not just broadcast something, but to develop a relationship, a call and response relationship with our audience. Steve, is there something you want to say about that? Yeah,
absolutely. I would expound upon this idea when you start talking about, like, what are we doing with this product and how we're using it to enrich and to speak to community and how we draw in other people. There are multiple things that I know that we put into the design fabric of this project. When Matt and I met in the initial early stages of this thing, we were dreamscaping in terms of other things that we can do with it. One aspect, of course, beyond, the work that Relina is doing in terms of going to schools and creating power groups and having these kind of conversations. We also talked about how powerful and how beautiful that this is, that this model that we create can be replicated. And this same kind of idea can happen in other cities, other states. And so we knew that it's very important that not only as we making this, we're really building this project from the ground up, and we build all the components, and we're going through all the trials and errors of it. We're making our mistakes. We're also finding our successes, and that's the way things are built. There's nothing that's been built that's like, oh, it's just this perfect build and it's this perfect structure and it's, oh, we got it. No, the new building comes up and the water's not working. Somebody's got to work on the plumbing, and so that's just the nature of it. Or there's a leak in the roof. We just put a brand new roof up. What's going on? That's part of building something, and something that has meaning. And so I think that, and to go with that, I think that foundationally, I think we got something that's really strong and beautiful because of all the players who are committed to this project, to make it, to see it not only happen, but to see this first phase of it come to fruition. We have accomplished that. It's been done. It's not an idea anymore. It's done. It's finished. And then now the question is, as we are doing postmortem right now, how can we be better? How can we be stronger? How can we enrich this story to make it even clearer? How can we put even more elements in here, more nuggets for our audience to be able to draw upon and create more sparks for conversation and so forth? Then the other aspect too is there's some self-sufficient elements built in here. Like, we got images that I've created that we replicate and we use for fundraising to support this project. And we're going to create more of those kinds of self-replicating kinds of elements, because at the end of the day, I have a friend of mine was telling me, he said, hey man, Steve, I'm really into business and so forth. He said, the beautiful thing about you as you're an artist, you got product. And that's what everybody's looking for, a product. So we have that. So I look at it beyond just a product in terms of capitalism, just as is one of our tenets. It's looked upon as, how can we use this element to expand, to grow, and how can we use the tenets and the elements of this project to reach out with more people? So how can we work with the power of exponential, not only in terms of spreading the message, but using the gifts from this project to pass it forward, to pay it forward. So that's another key element. The other space too is, we talked about going to conferences and speaking at other institutions, other spaces with other groups, and sharing this message there. I'm sharing this stuff in Virginia where I'm at. I'm a person who travels quite a bit around the country and to other around this country and other countries. I'm sharing it. I'm speaking it. I'm in essence evangelizing it. And that's what all of us are doing. Constantly speaking and sharing it, spreading the word, spreading the message. And that's the power of grassroots. And I think that becomes another strong element that we have built into this project and that we're working from. And then the other thing is too, I get an opportunity to teach youth about this craft of storytelling, story making. So I'm teaching all these elements that I learned as being as an educator, the bulk of my career, as well as being a visual artist. I have this opportunity and a platform to bring them into these spaces and have these classrooms where I can talk to them about visual storytelling and how to build these elements. So it's got so many layers that are woven into this thing. It's about our intentionality of making sure that we're addressing these various issues. And I think that becomes another major player in terms of the power of this project and how we're grafting other people in. But I know what I would love to see, and I know I'm gonna do my job, and I know Matt and Relina would do their jobs in this regard, is to get other communities to go through a similar process. I'll tell you this one last thing in vein with this whole vein. I remember being at the Women's March in DC. And I remember marching on the street and I'm yelling stuff out. There was all kinds of different chants going on. And that's what stood out to me. I said, yeah, this is about women's rights, but they're talking about, there was 15 different so-called protest arguments that were projected out. Almost every block I walked, I heard something different come out. And then I was like, yeah, they're different, but guess what? We're all out here together. And that goes back to what Matt was saying in terms of, yes, everybody's reading the same book, but multiple people are going to see it from different angles because we see things from where you are cognitively and what you've experienced. And those characters and those stories and those spaces and places transform. And then it would transform with them over time. Imagine reading this as a teenager, then reading this after you've gone through some stuff. not to say that teenagers don't go through things, because some teenagers in our fabric have experienced far greater things than we will ever want a teenager to experience, and they do. And that's the reality of this work too, as well. But nonetheless, that person now sees it as a seasoned adult and reads the same book, and it's going to ring completely different. But wow, what's so beautiful is the intergenerational space that we create to have this multi-generational, intergenerational conversation, regardless of our race and representation, and to engage on all these different issues and to see how can we draw closer together again. So I think all these elements tie together.
And because I think when I started the question, I noticed, Relina, that you were about to say something. So I want to know what you'd like to say about this as part of perhaps.
I don't think it's as profound, but I would just want the community members and leaders to know that like how community led this project is. So I'll reiterate some things that were said before just for this specific idea is that I got involved with the project because of my involvement with the community and community service. And the first thing I did for the project was share my opinions on issues that are prevalent today. And so that was the very first thing um before there was even an outline of the comic. It was what are mine and then two other teens, what are your opinions on this issue, this issue, this issue, and we conversed, like we just talked about it. It wasn't like it wasn't a questionnaire or like we need to know three teens, what do you think? It was more just like, okay, and this, so there are times where the three of us were on the same Zoom call with Mr. Matt facilitating and asking us these questions, and then there were other times where we were just spoken to one-on-one, and we just had conversations about these issues. Then the story is created by a group of people from the New Orleans community, and then the three main characters are based off and written by like uh created by three real life New Orleans teens. The characters all representing and dealing with what is important and to address for the three teens in real life. And then the community involvement doesn't stop with the making of the comic. Now, we are actively looking for feedback from members of our community on what they took from the story, what they believe the comic adds to the world, and how we can continue the story doing justice to the characters, the issues, and our community. We're doing this, like they said, by hosting workshops for teens in schools and youth programs, and by sharing it with, my friends, our Mr. Matt, Steve, friends, uh, and having them like download it, which is free, by the way, and then asking them to answer the early reader survey, which again is free, and then how they can help is like I just said, reading it, sharing your thoughts, and then even like I've I've reached out to, like I said earlier, I have a friend from a school program that I met because she showed interest in the comic when I was talking about it in our library, and that was just the word of mouth, just talking about it. She's been a real help. She's the first person that I was able to interview for the blog. So just word of mouth and sharing it with your friends, family, neighbors, community, and then having them share it as well if they were touched by it. And then also, encouraging them to not only do the survey, but like I learned a lot from my friend, or like my other friends who came to the June 10th event. What's the name of the event, Mr. Mayor?
The premiere, we had the premiere.
Premiere. Yes, we had a premiere event. And one of my other friends from the school program came over just to support me, and she was able to take the comics home, and that's just the idea that, like Steve was talking about grassroots campaigning and just like actually actively word of mouth, but also like encourage them to reach out to you, like I've or like reach out to us, I guess, because of how much I've learned it, how the story affected the people that I know just by them telling me and not by them typing words down.
Mhm.
You've made a very compelling case for how people should be paying attention to this. All of you have. And I hope that this interview that we're doing together can augment all of your efforts to bring attention to the comic, to share the importance of storytelling, all the things that you pointed out, and to really consider how to get involved by just all the points that you've made, Helena, in terms of what you're looking for. So we'll do our best to get the word out about this, and
Thank
really
you for,
it's wonderful to meet you and hear all this labor of love, clearly. Did you
Absolutely.
want to say something, Matt, as we
I was
close?
gonna say, thank you for the opportunity. This is not only a promotional opportunity for us, it's a group development process, because the three of us preparing for this, and we involved a fourth member of our group and a fifth member, Lisa and Andrea, all of whom are working on other behind the scenes aspects of the project. And it really, having this to look forward to and prepare for was an important event for us. So thank you.